He crushed my tulips with his truck tires and then laughed in my face. That's when I knew I wasn't dealing with just a bad neighbor. I was dealing with a straight-up villain in cargo shorts. I live in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. One of those places where people still wave from their porches and mow their lawns every Saturday like it's a sacred ritual. My house isn't fancy. It's a modest little place with a tiny patch of front lawn that I actually care about. Green, even, peaceful. You know, mine. And then Rick moved in next door. Big guy, big mouth, and an even bigger truck. At first, it was small stuff. Loud music at night, trash cans left out for days. That kind of thing. Annoying, sure, but manageable. Then came the truck. He had this lifted, coal-rolling monstrosity that looked like it ate Priuses for breakfast. And for whatever reason, Rick decided my front lawn was the perfect parking spot. Not his driveway, not the street, my lawn. The first time it happened, I figured it was an accident. "Hey man," I said, walking out with a smile I had to force through my teeth. "Could you maybe not park there? It's just, my yard." He smirked. Yeah, just needed to unload some stuff. Won't happen again. It happened again, and again, and again. By week 3, my lawn looked like a herd of bison had performed a modern dance routine on it. Tire tracks, mud pits, and the tulips my wife planted before she passed? Obliterated. I tried everything. Friendly reminders, notes, even talked to the HOA. But Rick was untouchable. He shrugged off warnings like mosquito bites. One day, I caught him in the act, engine still running, tires halfway into my lawn like he owned the place. I walked out and said, "Seriously, Rick?" He just looked at me, laughed, and said, "What are you gonna do?" "Call the lawn police." I stood there, jaw clenched, blood boiling. It wasn't just the truck. It was the disrespect. It was him acting like I was nothing, like my home was nothing. That's when I decided, if he wanted a game, fine. But I wasn't playing nice anymore. You see, what Rick didn't know is that I have a lot more patience than he does, and a very creative mind when I'm pushed. The trap I was about to set? Let's just say it would be loud, legal, and expensive. And oh yeah, there'd be receipts. Because Rick was about to learn what happens when you pick a quiet neighbor with nothing left to lose. Rick didn't just park on my lawn. He declared war on it. And somewhere along the way, he decided I was part of the battlefield too. After that day he laughed in my face, I tried to keep my cool. I really did. I thought, maybe he just needed time to get bored of the whole thing. Maybe if I ignored it, he'd move on. Maybe the universe would magically install some decency into his brain. Spoiler, it didn't. Instead, things got worse. First, it was the parking. Now it was every day, morning and night. Big, dumb tires grinding into the dirt. He even started parking deeper into my lawn, like he was daring me to say something again. So I bought a few small "no parking on grass" signs, just some cheap ones from Amazon. Put M right where he usually parked. Next morning, signs were gone, completely vanished. But he'd left me a little gift, an empty beer can shoved into one of the holes where the sign used to be. Real classy guy. Then the music started. Every night around 11 p.m., Rick would crank up his outdoor speakers and blast either classic rock or EDM, like some kind of deranged DJ with no volume control and no taste. I'd lie in bed listening to Thump 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 while my bedroom walls vibrated like a nightclub bathroom. I knocked on his door twice. The first time, he pretended not to hear me. The second time, he opened the door, grinned, and said, "What? You got sensitive ears, Grandpa. I'm 48. And I don't look a day over. Please stop testing me." Then came the garbage. Not his trash cans, those were already permanent yard ornaments by now. I'm talking about loose garbage. One morning, I woke up to find fast food wrappers, beer bottles, and cigarette butts tossed onto my driveway and front steps. I checked my security cam footage. Guess who? Rick, walking over around 2 a.m., drunk, shirtless, eating a taco and dropping the wrapper right on my welcome mat like it was a joke. The next day, I politely mentioned I had footage. He shrugged. Go ahead and post it. I look good on camera. Then he winked. He winked. At this point, I started documenting everything. Photos, video clips, notes. I started a little folder on my desktop called Operation Rick. Because yeah, it was personal now. But then he went too far. It was a Saturday morning. I was raking the yard, trying to relevel the dirt where his truck had been. Out of nowhere, I hear this loud clang, like metal hitting metal. I look up. Rick's in his driveway. He's throwing something onto the roof of my shed. Golf balls, one after another, just casually lobbing them over like a bored teenager. Hey, I shout. He grins and throws one more, underhand, slow, and smug. Oops, he says. Didn't see where that one went. I walked up to the edge of our property line. You throw another thing onto my shed, and I swear, he cut me off. What? You gonna knit me to death. That line. That stupid line. I actually laughed, but it wasn't the good kind. It was the I'm 2 seconds away from losing it kind. And then, as if all of this wasn't enough, Rick started filing complaints. Yeah, complaints. He called the HI on me. Apparently, my grass was unkempt. You know, the grass he ruined. He also told them I was intimidating him and harassing his property with surveillance devices. The surveillance devices were 2 Amazon cameras I had pointed at my own house. But now I was getting letters from the HOA telling me to maintain curb appeal and consider neighborly alternatives to conflict. I read that last one twice. Neighborly. Alternatives. Sure, I had some ideas. They weren't gonna like them. The last straw? It happened 3 nights ago. I was asleep. Deep sleep. The kind you only get after mowing half a yard that isn't dead yet. Then I heard it. Crack. Like wood snapping. I jolted up, looked out the window. His truck was in my yard again. But this time, it had taken out my mailbox. Just knocked it over like a bowling pin. And Rick? He was back in his driveway already, lighting a cigarette. Watching. Didn't even pretend to feel bad. I walked out in my robe and stood there, looking at my busted mailbox. He yelled across the dark, "You should really move that thing. It's a hazard." I didn't answer. I didn't yell. I just turned around, walked back inside, quiet, because I was done talking. Rick wanted to turn this into a game? Fine. He just didn't know I was about to flip the board. The morning after Rick took out my mailbox, I stared at the splintered wood like it was a crime scene. Because honestly, that's what it felt like. A hit and run on the last shred of peace I had left. I tried filing a police report. That went nowhere. The officer looked at me, looked at the mailbox, and said, "Do you have footage of the actual impact?" "No," I said, "but I saw it." He was there. He laughed. The officer shrugged. Hard to prove intent. Could have been an accident. Right. An accident that happens exactly where he's parked illegally for weeks. I asked if I could at least press charges for trespassing. Private property disputes are civil matters, sir. That word, sir, it always sounds polite when what they really mean is, you're on your own. That day I went back to Home Depot and bought a new mailbox and a bag of concrete mix. This one was going to be bulletproof. Literally. I poured concrete into the base and set it so deep in the ground it'd survive a tornado. Or a truck. Let's see him accidentally knock this one down. Then came the flyers. One morning, I walked out and found printed flyers stapled to every light pole on the street. Rick's doing. Each one had a blurry photo of me from behind, taken without my knowledge along with the words, neighborhood creep, filming homes and Anth. Spying on families, I ripped down every one I could find. My hands were shaking. It didn't even make sense. I had cameras on my own house because he was the problem. But Rick was good at twisting things. And some neighbors started giving me side eyes. It got in my head. At work, I kept checking the cameras on my phone over and over. My boss noticed. "Everything okay at home?" I lied. "Yeah, just some home repairs." My performance slipped. I missed deadlines. I skipped lunch. I stopped sleeping. Because every night, I was waiting for something. More garbage. More vandalism. Another accident. My sister visited one weekend. She walked up to the door and said, "What happened to your yard?" I didn't have an answer. She looked around. Saw the crushed grass, The busted spots, the patched up mailbox, the signs that had been torn out and thrown back in like someone was mocking me. "You can't let him do this," she said. "I know," I told her. "I know." But it kept going. A week later, I came home to find my back gate open. I always close the gate. It's locked. Always. And inside, my shed had been opened. Rummaged through. Nothing major was missing. But someone had clearly gone through my tools. My things. I checked the camera. No clear footage. Just a shadow. A figure moving quickly. Right after midnight. And Rick? Rick was standing in his driveway when I pulled in. Smiling. He raised a hand in a lazy little wave. I didn't wave back. It felt like psychological warfare. He never did anything you could prove. Never enough to get arrested. Just enough to break you, inch by inch. Every time I fixed something, he broke something else. Every time I said nothing, he pushed a little further. Then came the animal control visit. No joke. An actual guy with a clipboard showed up at my door. "Sir, we've had a report of aggressive dogs on your property." I stared at him. "I don't have a dog." He blinked, checked his clipboard. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "Very." He left, apologized, said they'd look into it. But I knew who sent him. Rick was trying to paint me as a threat, a nutcase, a creep, anything to discredit me. It worked on the HOA. They sent me a letter about ongoing concerns regarding community harmony. What the hell does that even mean? I started staying up late, just watching. My front window, my cameras, every car that passed, every noise outside. I became someone I didn't recognize. Paranoid, exhausted, angry all the time. I flinched when a car backfired. I tensed up when someone knocked on the door. I hated who I was turning into. And that made me hate him even more. But the breaking point? It wasn't even about me. It was my niece. She's 5. My sister brought her over for a weekend visit. Said it might cheer me up. We were outside, blowing bubbles, trying to act normal. And Rick? Rick fired up his lawnmower, drove it right to the edge of the property line, and started revving it over and over like a chainsaw. Then, get this, he cranked up his speakers and blasted death metal. Loud, growling, screaming. My niece covered her ears and started crying. And Rick? He just sat there, watching us, smiling behind his stupid sunglasses. That was it. That was the moment. That was when the switch flipped. I looked down at my niece, shaking and scared. Then I looked up at Rick. And I said quietly to myself, enough is enough. It's time for revenge. I didn't sleep that night, not out of fear. Not anymore. Something had shifted. For the first time in months, I felt calm, focused, because I wasn't wondering what Rick would do next. I was planning what I'd do to him. You've got to understand, I'm not a violent person. I'm not some revenge-hungry vigilante. I'm just a regular guy who wanted to mow his lawn in peace and maybe drink a cup of coffee without looking over his shoulder. But Rick? He burned that world to the ground. So I decided I'd build a new one. One where Rick finally paid. At first, I went full fantasy mode. I had these dumb ideas, childish stuff. Filling his tailpipe with expanding foam. Loosening his lug nuts just enough to rattle his precious truck. Renting a tow truck and accidentally having his vehicle impounded. Don't worry, I didn't do any of those. But the urge was real. Still, I knew better. I didn't want a quick win. I wanted him buried in paperwork, fines, and stress. So I started doing what Rick never expected. I read. Turns out, Rick had broken a lot more rules than I realized. I started with the HOA bylaws. They were dense, like reading soup ingredients written by a lawyer on pain meds. But buried in there were some tasty little rules. No commercial vehicles parked overnight. Guess what Rick drives? No unapproved landscaping or outdoor equipment. His portable generator definitely counts. No noise violations after 10 p.m. Let's talk about his DJ sets at 1 a.m. I made a list. Then I made copies of the list, with pictures and timestamps. Next, I pulled up county codes, municipal noise ordinances, zoning laws. Did you know there's a $250 fine in our county for illegal dumping if you can prove who did it? Because I do now. And I had footage. Still, information wasn't enough. I needed support. So I started talking to neighbors. Not all of them liked me, I get it. Rick had poisoned the well. But some of them, they hated him just as much. One lady, 3 houses down, told me he hit her fence with his truck last year and blamed her mailbox for jumping out. Another guy said Rick let his dog poop on his driveway. Repeatedly. A third neighbor, a quiet older man named Lewis, invited me inside and showed me a whole folder labeled Truck Guy. It was 36 pages. Lewis was a hero. Together, we formed a plan. Nothing crazy. Just a little neighborhood coalition. We called it Rick Watch. We met twice. Drank lukewarm coffee. Shared stories. Compared notes. We weren't vigilantes. We were citizens with phones and time on our hands. And petty anger. That part's important. With Rick Watch in place, I got to work. First, we started documenting. Everything. Every parking violation. Every time his truck crossed the property line. Every decibel of noise after dark. Lewis bought a decibel meter. Nancy, from 2 doors down, had a friend at code enforcement. And me? I started filing complaints. So many complaints. But I didn't flood the system. That's what Rick would do. No, we staggered them. Scheduled. Strategic. Every week, another small report. Every time Rick broke a rule, someone was watching. Then came the real ace. The thing Rick loved most, his lifted coal-rolling beast of a truck? Yeah, it turns out it wasn't street legal. I didn't know that until I checked the DMV website and started looking up modifications. You're not allowed to exceed a certain height in our state. Rick's truck was well over. He also had no visible front plate. And the windows? Tinted past the legal limit. So I started reporting those violations too. One at a time. Anonymously. Every week. Tick, tick, tick. Still, it wasn't enough. Rick was thick-skulled. Nothing got through. He laughed off warnings. Shrugged off tickets. So I got creative. I found a website that lets you check public records. You can look up people's property lines, tax info, permits, all legal. Guess what I found? Rick's property line ends 2 feet before where he thinks it does, which means his fire pit, his trash bins, his precious no trespassing sign, all technically on my property. And that meant one beautiful word, leverage. I went down to the city planning office, told them I wanted to file a property encroachment concern. They gave me a form. I filled it out with every petty detail I could muster. They said it could take a few weeks to process. Take your time, I said. I'm patient. And I was. Because every day Rick parked on my grass, every beer tossed into my yard, every smug wave, he was just digging his own hole. He didn't even know it yet. And then I found the jackpot. Through one of those random neighborhood Facebook groups, someone posted about a local environmental grant. If you installed native plants, rain gardens, or erosion control landscaping, the city would cover 70% of the cost. Guess what my front yard qualified for? Every single thing. So I applied, got approved, and had a team come out to install deep landscaping boulders, native grasses, and decorative fencing along the edge of my property. It looked amazing. And best of all, there was no longer room for Rick's truck. And oh boy, the day he came home and saw it, he looked like someone canceled Christmas. He stormed over, banged on my door. What the hell is all this? I smiled. Rain garden. Fully approved. Want to see the paperwork? He looked like he wanted to punch the air. You can't block me out like this. I raised an eyebrow. Your truck was never allowed on my lawn. You've been breaking multiple city codes for months. If you try to move one of those boulders, you'll be fined. And if you set foot on this property again, I leaned in, voice low and calm. I'll have you arrested. He didn't say a word, just turned, walked off, and slammed his door hard enough to shake the siding. But this was just phase 1, because now I had the real tools. Footage, records, fines, violations. I had Rick's signature on a handwritten note he once left on my door. I kept it. It was dumb and rude, but now it was evidence. And I had friends, the neighbors, HOA members, People Rick had ticked off for years. And every one of them had a story. I started assembling everything. A full report, property violations, noise complaints, trespassing footage, harassment, unlawful vehicle modifications, illegal dumping, boundary encroachment. It was beautiful, a revenge portfolio, and I had a meeting set with the city. I don't know what's going to happen next. Fines? Property liens? Maybe they'll revoke his permits. All I know is, Rick's finally about to learn what it feels like when every rule he's ignored starts kicking down his door. Because tomorrow morning, I'm walking into that office with the biggest smile I've had in months. And I'm bringing everything. The city office had free coffee in the waiting room. It was terrible, burnt, lukewarm, tasted like someone filtered it through a sock. But I drank every drop like it was champagne, because I was celebrating. I handed the file over to a very polite city clerk named Sandra. She flipped through it slowly, page after page. Photos, dates, diagrams, noise reports, emails, even screenshots of Rick's stupid flyers. After about 10 minutes, she looked up at me and said, "This is thorough." I nodded. It's been a long year. She closed the folder. "We'll get back to you. But this is exactly the kind of thing we investigate." Then she smiled. The good kind of smile. The kind that said, "You're not crazy. And you might actually win." The first thing that hit Rick was a parking citation. $150. Left on his windshield. Right there in front of God and everybody. His truck was just barely angled over the edge of my new landscaping. He came out holding the ticket like it had personally insulted him. Walked over to my property line. Stared at the boulders. Then back at the ticket. Then back at the boulders. He didn't knock. Didn't yell. Just went back inside. But the look on his face? Confused. Like someone pulled the rug out and he wasn't sure how far the floor went. The next one was better. Code enforcement. 2 officers. Bright orange vests. Clipboards. I watched them from the kitchen window as they circled his truck. Then his yard. Then his fire pit. Then the side of the house. Rick came out halfway through and tried to talk to them. Lots of arm waving. Laughing. Patting them on the back. They weren't laughing. They handed him a yellow form. He slammed the door so hard, his wind chimes fell off the hook. Later that day, I got a text from Lewis. "Nice work. I saw him ripping down that "No trespassing" sign. Guess it finally clicked it was on your property." I smiled, took a deep breath. We were rolling. But then, something weird happened. The music stopped. No more 1 a.m. bass drops. No more Van Halen solos on loop. His yard went quiet. His truck stayed parked in his own driveway. I kept waiting for the catch, for the retaliation. Instead, he disappeared for a few days. Gone. Lights off. No truck. No yelling through the walls. Just silence. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I started checking my cameras 3 times a day. Paranoia's a hard thing to turn off once it's burned into your brain. I kept thinking, what if he's planning something? What if he's not done? 3 days later, he was back. Pulled in around 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. And he did something that completely threw me off. He waved at me like a real human wave. I didn't wave back. I just stood there, frozen on my porch, holding a bag of mulch like it was a weapon. He didn't say anything, just walked inside. No truck on my lawn. No garbage. Nothing. That night, I sat on the couch staring at the security feed like I was watching a horror movie. Nothing happened. No yelling. No stomping. No loud engines. It almost felt normal. But normal didn't make sense. Not with Rick. Not after everything. The next day, the letters started coming in. One from the HOA, one from the city, and a certified envelope I had to sign for also from code enforcement. I opened them in order. The HOA one said, "Thank you for bringing these matters to our attention. Multiple property violations are currently under review. A hearing will be scheduled." That was good. Next one, city letter. Turns out Rick's fire pit was within a restricted zone. Too close to a fence. No permit. Violation pending. Also good. The last envelope? A full-blown abatement notice. Apparently, the inspection revealed multiple unpermitted modifications on Rick's property. Shed placement, fence alignment, some kind of drainage issue. Oh, and illegal use of gravel fill on shared easement land. Translation? Big. Fines. And city-mandated correction deadlines. I was stunned. I wasn't even expecting half of that. I sent a group text to the Rickwatch crew. Game on. Lewis responded with a single word, boon. That night, I went out to the porch. I didn't mean to. I just ended up there. Habit, I guess. It was quiet again. Rick's house was dark except for a porch light. Then I saw him, sitting on his front step, alone. No beer, no music, no friends over, just Rick, looking at his stack of papers in his lap. Even from across the yard, I could tell he looked stressed, like someone finally turned the pressure back on him. I should have felt better, but instead I felt weird, like it wasn't over, like he wasn't done. And I was right, because the next morning there was a letter taped to my front door. No envelope, just paper and tape, folded once. I opened it, typed in all caps, "Hope you enjoy your little victory. This isn't over." No signature, but I didn't need one. Rick was back, and now he was pissed. That note on my door, it didn't scare me. It fueled me, because that was the first time Rick didn't laugh. No smirk, no beer tossed in my bushes, no smart remarks about my sensitive ears, just a passive-aggressive letter, typed, no guts to even sign his name. That's not a threat, that's a crack. And cracks? They break. I didn't respond. I didn't go over there, didn't yell, didn't call anyone. I just smiled and texted the Rickwatch crew. Final phase starts now. See, while Rick was busy sulking on his porch and writing anonymous hate mail, I was still working. I'd filed one last complaint. A big one. And this time, it wasn't about noise or trash. It was about money. Remember that oversized truck of his? The beast that left tire scars in my yard for months? Well, according to DMV records and the business license registry, Rick had quietly registered that truck under a small contracting company. Nothing fancy, just a name, Silver Ridge Hauling. No website, no reviews, but he listed it on his taxes, which means he was claiming the truck as a commercial vehicle. And if that truck was being stored at his house overnight in a residential zone without a commercial parking permit, that's a violation. And guess what else? Commercial vehicles parked on residential property without proper disclosure? Insurance fraud. So I made some calls, took a long lunch, called the zoning office, then the vehicle code department, then the tax board. Each time, I asked polite questions. Hi, just wondering, what are the rules for storing business equipment on residential lots? Can a property owner register a commercial vehicle at a home address? What if the business doesn't match the zoning code? I wasn't accusing anyone. I was just curious. Turns out, they were very interested in my curiosity. And then, I sent them the photos, the business registry, the time-stamped parking footage, the screenshots of him loading contractor gear into the bed of the truck. The invoice I found taped to his passenger window one day, clearly visible in my footage, listing Silver Ridge Hauling, on-site pickup and debris removal. It was overkill, but I wanted to bury him. 2 weeks later, it all hit. A certified letter was delivered to Rick's house while I was outside watering my now thriving rain garden. He opened the door, signed for it, read it right there on the porch. I watched his face go from smug to full panic in 5 seconds. He looked around, like someone had snuck up behind him. Then he locked eyes with me, and I waved. Small, polite, exactly like he used to. He didn't wave back. Just stormed inside and slammed the door so hard it knocked over one of his cheap porch chairs. From what I heard later, because the Rickwatch network lives for updates, Rick got slapped with a zoning violation, a business license audit, a cease and desist order for commercial operation on residential property, and a lovely fine for improper commercial vehicle storage. On top of that, his HIA hearing finally happened. Lewis went. So did Nancy. They gave statements. I submitted written testimony with all our evidence. The board voted 7-1 to issue formal sanctions. Rick had to remove the fire pit, rebuild the fence with a licensed contractor, pay a fine, and lose parking privileges on any shared neighborhood property. But here's the crown jewel. The truck, the beast, he had to move it. He couldn't park it in his driveway anymore, not without proper permits, which he couldn't get under his zoning. And the nearest storage lot? 30 minutes away. Monthly fee. No home access. And if he didn't move it, he'd get towed. That truck was his identity, his personality, his stupid throne on wheels. And now, it was gone. One morning, I watched him load a bunch of tools into the bed. Looked like he was trying to squeeze in one more sketchy job. He left in a rush. And the next day, the truck never came back. Someone said they saw it parked at the storage facility by the old highway exit. But Rick? He went quiet again. No music, no flyers, no shouting. Just a quiet, lonely house with a broken porch chair and a dead fire pit. The lawn? Still patchy and brown. He stopped trying to fix it. Guess it's not so fun when you're the one getting run over. 2 weeks after the final citation, I came home to something unexpected. A for sale sign, right in Rick's front yard. Plain and simple. For sale, by owner. Call for info. No fanfare. No open house. Just surrender. I stood there for a long time, not smiling, not gloating, just breathing, because it was over, really over. Later that night, Louis texted me, "Victory beer on my porch. You in?" I grabbed a six-pack and walked over. We didn't talk about Rick. Not much. Just sat outside. Quiet. Peaceful. For the first time in a long time. I still have the footage, the photos, the files, the binder full of every complaint. I keep it in a box labeled, "In case of new Rick." But honestly, I hope I never have to use it, because I don't want revenge. Not really. What I want is something Rick never gave me. Peace. He finally moved out last week. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't even wave. But you know what? I waved anyway. Felt right. And now I've got one more surprise for him. One last cherry on top. Because guess who just bought his house? I didn't actually buy Rick's house. I said that for dramatic effect. But I did help choose who moved in. The minute that for sale sign went up, I called a friend of mine, real estate agent, good guy, knows how to ask the right questions. I said, "Listen, I don't want to buy the place. I just want to make sure the next person isn't a total disaster in human form." He laughed. Got it. No jerks. No trucks. No chaos. Exactly. He screened buyers. Quietly. Casually. Nothing shady. Just asked them things like, "Do you like peace and quiet? What do you think about HOAs? Are you the kind of person who revs engines at midnight or files noise complaints when a bird chirps too loud?" That kind of thing. The couple who bought the place? Total dream. They're both teachers. Middle school science and high school history. They're the type of people who apologize when their sprinklers accidentally spray onto the sidewalk. They garden on weekends. Compost. Invite neighbors over for iced tea. They wave when they see me. They even asked before putting up a small bird feeder near the edge of the lawn. A bird feeder. Do you know how beautiful that is? Rick? No clue where he ended up. I heard rumors he's renting somewhere out near the industrial park. A one-bedroom apartment above a garage, apparently. A neighbor told me his truck got repossessed. Another said he tried starting a new hauling company under a different name, but couldn't get a license because of unpaid citations and code violations. Honestly, I don't know what's true and what's just spicy neighborhood gossip. And I don't really care, because this isn't about him anymore. My yard is green again. I reseeded the bare patches, tilled the soil, put in a small bench near the edge where the tulips used to be. They're back now, by the way. Bloomed this spring like they never left. Bright and stubborn, just like I had to be. Sometimes I sit out there in the evening, coffee or tea in hand. No music, no trash, no shouting from across the fence. Just wind, leaves, a squirrel trying to break into the bird feeder. Peace, real peace. I learned a lot from this. about boundaries, about patience, about what happens when you let someone walk all over you, literally and figuratively, and don't push back. But most of all, I learned revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes it's just quiet justice, paperwork, photos, a steady hand while someone else flails around, a smile you give someone while they unravel under the weight of their own decisions. People think revenge means destruction, like you have to burn someone's life down to feel better. But really, it means reminding them they don't control you, that they lost, that you're free. I keep the box, the in case of new Rick file, tucked away in the closet, right next to my lawn tools and a bag of tulip bulbs for next year. And every so often, I add a little note to it, not out of fear, just preparation. Because peace is something you protect. You fight for it once, so you don't have to fight again. And if another Rick ever rolls into town, well, let's just say, I've got the blueprint now. He won't be parking on my lawn.